Well, welcome back to our study of the minor prophets. Today we're going to actually close out chapter 6 of the book of Zechariah and also finish chapter 7 and chapter 8. And then I want you to tune back in this afternoon because we're going to release another video as we close out the entire book of Zechariah before moving on to Malachi tomorrow. We are moving fast through this section. So again, I want you to hang in there. If you're watching these later and you're thinking, why in the world are you rushing through these videos? You know, we've been going through this for some time, and on Instagram, we've been trying to do this every single day through the week. But there's been days we've had to miss. There's been days where I've had to be away and couldn't get to these. There's been days like yesterday where for some reason they didn't post and I had to come back and post them a couple days late. So I want to finish this before Christmas. That's why I'm pushing in a couple videos a day. And the reason is because I want to spend time in Zechariah, Malachi, and then have one day where we talk about, in a short, brief video, the intertestamental period, which is the 400 years between Malachi's last words as the last prophet and the birth announcement of Jesus. There's 400 years between Malachi, the conclusion of the Old Testament, and the New Testament, where we see the birth of Christ. And I want to talk about just what happens in that 400-year period. Where is God in that picture, and what's going on in the story? So that's what I want to do. And we're going to make sure that happens. I want to have that video available to you guys on Christmas Eve morning so you guys can kind of have an idea of where we are in the story. And if you guys are joining us for Christmas Eve at FBCW or you're going to your own church, wherever you're going, I want you to go into that service just knowing how much people were expecting Jesus. They were longing for the Messiah to come. And we celebrate on this side of his arrival, knowing that he has come and he will come once again. So that's where we are. That's where we're going the next couple of days. So hang in there, watch these videos, share these videos with your friends, and let's have a great time studying these last books. But starting in verse 9 of chapter 6 to the end of the chapter, we see Joshua given a crown as priest. He's given a crown as a priest, high priest. Remember, Zerubbabel led 50,000 people back from exile in Persia to come back and rebuild this temple. And not only does Zerubbabel come back, Zerubbabel is the great-grandson of the previous king who was overthrown when Nebuchadnezzar came in and destroyed Jerusalem, but he was given back the signet ring, so he was kind of restoring the Davidic line, who later Jesus would come through. But also a man named Joshua, son of Jehozadak, came back, who was in the priestly order. Here in this section, we see God, through his prophet Zechariah, anoint him with a crown, showing that he is a priestly king. He was going to be the person who would govern in this temple, but also be a person who offered up sacrifices in this temple. He would be on behalf of God leading the people of God, but also on behalf of God restoring the people of God. So as in this vision, as he sees these things, he sees the fulfillment, he lays his crown upon Joshua's head. And what we're actually seeing is a foreshadow of something that would come later, because he actually says here in verse 12, it says, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, behold the man whose name is the branch." We've seen this name pop up in one of the 8 visions. This is referring to the Messiah. You can go back into the book of Isaiah, chapter 11, too. We see that this branch through the line of David, referring to the Messiah, would come. "For he shall branch out from his place. He shall build the temple of the Lord." So they're building the temple of the Lord. What temple is he talking about? He's talking about his temple. Remember, when Jesus came, he says, "Tear down this temple," referring to himself, "and I will rebuild it in 3 days." And he was going to establish a new temple, a new people. His temple would be built of the people of God who follow him, from Jews, Gentiles, Greeks, everybody who would call upon him as Lord. He says he's going to build his temple. And just like Joshua here, he will reign as king, and he will offer up sacrifices, meaning himself as priest. And we know that Jesus has fulfilled this. You can read this in the book of Hebrews. If you've never gone through Hebrews, go back through our Instagram, go back through our YouTube page. Earlier this summer, we went 31 days in the book of Hebrews. I think it's chapter 7. Don't quote me. I believe it's chapter 7 where Jesus is shown to be the priestly order, the priestly king through the order of Melchizedek, whose name is brought up in the Old Testament. And we see here Jesus, this image of Jesus ruling and reigning at the right hand of God, not only as king, he's king over his kingdom and his temple here, but also we see him interceding on our behalf, speaking to God on our behalf, cheering us on, motivating us as priests. We have this priestly king who has come, who was prophesied about hundreds of years before he was ever born. We see this in the person of Jesus. That's chapter 6. Chapter 7 and chapter 8 are actually very much connected because now 2 years has passed. 2 years has passed since the beginning stages of the rebuilding of this temple. And now a group of people have come from Bethel, which is 12 miles away from Jerusalem. They come to the priest of the temple and say, listen, hey, are we supposed to continue fasting and mourning? You think, what in the world are they talking about? Well, go back to the book of 2 Kings. And you can also read about this in Jeremiah 25, when Jeremiah prophesied that Babylon would come and destroy them. After they were destroyed, after Jerusalem was carried off into exile, the temple was gone, God ordained them and called them to fast and mourn. To fast and mourn for what? They said, I want you to fast and mourn because everything that you are seeing has happened because of your sin, your rejection, your disobedience, your rebellion. This is why you're going into exile. This is why the temple where I dwell in your midst is now gone. And this is what's going on. So I want you to fast. See, what's fasting? We know most people associate with food. I'm not going to eat from dusk till dawn. Or we think of other things that you may fast from. You may fast from social media or other things, but mostly in this context, it was fasting from food, fasting from substance, fasting from the things that were dependent upon. And the purpose was, he wanted these people to fast and to mourn, to grieve over their sin in order that they would come to find their dependence on God. And listen, you've been dependent upon every other thing. This is why you're seeing the things that you're seeing. I want you to be dependent upon me. So they come to this group of people come from Bethel to the priest, say, hey, are we supposed to keep doing this? They're thinking, well, now the temple is being rebuilt. Now the temple is kind of operating again. We're offering up sacrifices. Are we supposed to still be in mourning? And what we're going to see here is that God speaks to Zechariah and says, listen, I want to challenge your motives. Chapter 7 and chapter 8 is all about motives. He says, look back over your fathers. And it says in verse 4, it says, verse 5. Say to all the people of the land of the priests, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th month and on the 7th for these 70 years, was it for me? And whenever you ate or when you drank, did you not eat for yourselves and drink for yourselves? Were not these the words of the Lord proclaimed by the former prophets when Jerusalem was inhabited and prosperous with her cities around her in the south and the lowlands were inhabited? He's saying, listen, for 70 years, you fasted and mourned, but did you really do it for me? You offer up all these ceremonies, you offer up all these rituals, but did you really do it for me? He's challenging the very heart behind their obedience, the heart behind their decision, the heart behind their actions. The word of the Lord came to Zechariah saying, thus says the Lord of hosts, I love this, render true judgments, show kindness and mercy to one another. Do not oppress the widow and the fatherless or the sojourner or the poor, or let none of them devise evil against you. He said, this is what I desired, that you would not oppress people, that you would not bring false judgments down on people, that you would show kindness and mercy and grace and love. That's what I desired. I did not desire all their ceremonies. I did not desire all those things. While yes, they are acts of obedience, but I wanted the heart behind that to be in love with me, not in love for yourself. You fasted for yourself, and we know that because look what it says in verse 11. But they refused to pay attention and turned a stubborn shoulder and stopped their ears that they may not hear. They made their hearts diamond hard, lest they should hear the law and the word of the Lord of hosts. These people, this generation before them, are in exile because they refuse to listen to the Lord. They refuse to live lives of holiness and obedience, not out of motivation for just get things done, but out of motivation for love for the Lord. So this is what the true motive is. He desires justice and kindness over these simple religious practices. These people had made an idol of their religious practices, of their rituals, and they had neglected those around them, which is why in chapter 8, Zechariah shows a contrast between the generations before them and the generation today. He said in chapter 8, he's going to challenge them once again, saying, I want you to be motivated like I have been motivated to you. In chapter 8, he's showing that God is returning to his people. He's returning to these people. He's been jealous in his love, but also in his wrath. He says, I'm coming back to you. Out of my love that I have for you, I will bring goodness to you. I will restore you. I'll make you prosperous. I will lavish my blessings and my love and my grace and mercy upon you. And you will reap the benefits. You will see blessings upon blessings because I am in your midst. And then he starts saying in verses 16 through 23, here's what he wants these people, this generation to do now. These are the things that you shall do. I think this is true for us as well. I want you to speak the truth to one another. Render in your gates judgments that are true. Make for peace. Do not devise evil in your hearts against one another. And love no false oath. For all these things I hate. This verse I just read to you is the same thing that he called them to back in the chapter previously. The same command that he gave to these people, this generation before them, is the same command he's given them here. And what he's referring to is the covenant that he made with them. He says, listen, if you're going to be in a relationship with me, in a covenant with me, these are the things I hope to see from you. I want to see from you. But if you constantly break this covenant by doing these such things, there's going to be no blessings. There's going to be no presence in your midst. I won't be with you if you continually break this covenant. He says, but this is what it looks like to be in covenant with me, in relationship with me. Not that these things are expected, but that they are desired. That you and I, these people of God, because they're in a right relationship with him, they start seeing their motivations and their desires start to change. They're less focused on themselves and more focused on God, which in response now leads them to be more focused on one another. This is why we start seeing a future blessing when he starts to go in verse 20. Thus says the Lord of hosts, people shall yet come, even the inhabitants of many cities. The inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, let us go at once to entreat the favor of the Lord and seek the Lord of hosts. I myself am going. Many peoples and strong nations shall come and seek the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem, and to entreat the favor of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, in those days 10 men from nations of every tongue shall take hold of the robe of a Jew, saying, let us go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. And it's this future promise of blessings in Jerusalem, but also about a Messiah coming. There's going to be a day when people are going to want to come to Jerusalem to see what God is doing, that they've heard stories that God is in their midst, that he is moving and working, and that the people of God are so in love with him that they are showing love and compassion and grace and mercy and favor to all who come near them. No one's being oppressed. No one's receiving injustice, but justice is being done. Justice that is the overflow, the outflowing, outer working of God's presence in their lives. And we've seen that in the fulfillment of Jesus when Jesus has come and his presence was made known, and people from every nation and tribe were coming to hear him speak, but also coming to receive his blessings and his reward that he offers us through himself. You can go throughout the book of Acts and see how every tribe, tongue, and nation was coming to hear the gospel because of the Spirit falling down. The same presence that was in the temple is now being made manifest in the people of God. And we start seeing what happens when people in the book of Zechariah, in the book of Acts, today in 2020, when we are so focused on God, not on ourselves, there can be no injustice. We seek justice. We seek mercy. We seek kindness. And in today's age, it's very difficult as believers not to get stuck in a division. Sometimes we say, well, there's justice, like social justice, and there's the gospel. But what we truly believe as Christians is that when we accept the gospel, when we accept the message of Christ for ourselves, we welcome him into our life. We welcome him into our midst. We allow him to rule and reign on the throne of our heart. And then once that happens, we receive this overflowing of love and mercy and grace to all. Not just to a select few, but to everyone. But sometimes here's what we do. We get hung up on justice. We want to see justice done. And while yes, we all want to see justice done, but it has to be rooted in the gospel. I think, what does that mean? When it's rooted in the gospel, we will not demand justice while we blindly ignore injustices everywhere else, or even in our own home, our own churches. We don't stay on the street corner proclaiming justice and mercy and love, but then ignore it everywhere else. It's this holistic approach to life, that we believe that God has truly come for all people in the person of Jesus, and he has made a way for everyone. And true justice is pointing everyone to him and living lives of holiness. When we live those lives of holiness, all these other things that we see in 7 and 8, these things that he's called us to, will come to fruition because we're deeply in love with our Creator. Join us later today as we close out the book of Zechariah. Have a great day.